What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I wanted to talk about a topic that I see come up a decent amount within the community. Every now and then you'll see a comment that pops up that essentially says something to the effect of Cold War is a campier game than Modern Warfare, and there are actually more campers in Cold War than there were in Modern Warfare. Now personally, I completely disagree with these comments, and I really feel like a lot of this just comes down to people's definition of what camping is. And basically what I wanted to do in today's video is share my perspective on the difference between camping and holding power positions, because that's really the difference that I see here when comparing these two games. Now, I do anticipate with this video, I'm probably going to get a lot of comments of people just calling me a Treyarch fanboy and everything. But with this video, I really do want to focus on just the gameplay elements. I don't care which studio made each game. I just want to focus on what is actually going on within the gameplay and how the gameplay has been designed in relation to this topic. And like I said, a lot of this will just come down to your definition of what camping is, and for some people, their definition might be a little more broad than mine, but for me, when I think about a camper in Call of Duty, I'm thinking of somebody that's playing in a very limited way where they are locking down one position or one small area of the map that doesn't really have any objective significance. They're not really helping their team in any way by holding this position, they're just waiting for enemies to come to them, and their playstyle is purely reactionary. They're waiting for someone to bring the fight to them, and then they take advantage of that fact and try to use the element of surprise to kill that enemy as they approach. Now I will say, in kill-based modes like Team Deathmatch or Free-For-All, this is a totally valid playstyle that can actually be effective in helping your team win the game. And I want to be clear up front here, I don't necessarily have an issue with players that camp. I more so have an issue with gameplay design that heavily encourages and rewards the camping playstyle. As for holding a power position, I do consider this to be a different thing, even though there are some similar elements, like you are locking down a position and waiting for the enemies to come to you so that you can have the jump on them. You can be pre-aimed, you're on a good piece of cover, and they're out in the open and running to you. So I can definitely see why people lump that together with camping. However, at least from my perspective here, there are a few key differences between holding a power position and camping. For me, holding a power position is getting yourself up into a place where you're holding good map control and you're putting yourself in a position where you're cutting off key lanes or key angles or locking down an important objective point. Holding a power position is something that is greatly beneficial to your team, especially in objective game modes. Whereas camping is something that isn't beneficial to your team, at least in objective game modes, because you're not really holding that key position. You're not necessarily locking down an important lane and shutting things down. You're just waiting for someone to come to you in your random little hiding spot so you can pick them off. So I think the most simple way of differentiating between a camping position and a power position is power positions allow you to lock down key sections of a map in order to help your team, whether that be through map control or objective control. Whereas with a camping position, I see this as more of a selfish playstyle where you're not locking down an area of the map that's really going to help your team. It's got no significance to your team holding map control or a key lane or an objective or anything. You're just locking down sort of a random area, hoping people will come by. To me, I love it when I have teammates that are locking down power positions, but I hate it when I have teammates that are camping, because one is helping the team, the other one isn't helping the team, and in some cases hurting the team, because you're essentially taking yourself out of the fight by just camping in an insignificant area of the map. And you may pick off some kills here or there, but you're not really helping the team all that much. So comparing Cold War to Modern Warfare 2019 when it comes to power positions versus camping, I think most people would agree, at least by my definition of power positions versus camping, that Cold War is much more about holding power positions, whereas Modern Warfare 2019, there's generally much more camping involved. And this is due to several aspects. A lot of them are just the gameplay design, and another huge part of it is the map design. When it comes to Cold War's map design, in general, there are of course exceptions to this, but in general for the 6v6 maps in Cold War's multiplayer, there are lots of very carefully designed key pieces of cover that are clearly designed to lock down a certain lane or section of the map, or to gain a certain sight line. These positions are really easy to pick up on and learn with just a little bit of playtime. It really doesn't take too much to understand where the power positions are on a map. And also, generally speaking, I feel like the maps in Cold War are balanced pretty nicely, where if there is a power position on one side of the map, usually there's at least one good counter power position on the other side of the map. And generally speaking, at least from my experience, most of the gameplay flow with Cold War is fighting over control of the key power positions and essentially trying to gain that map control so that you can get into a good power position, so then you can hold that map control by using that power position. And with this, you're constantly pushing back and forth, so you might get a good push in and you gain some map control, but then the enemy tries to take that from you and push you back. And the power positions are the key elements that sort of hold all of this together. Contrasting that with Modern Warfare and their map design, the devs themselves stated that they wanted their map design to be more porous, and they wanted to provide safe spaces so that lesser skilled players had more room to breathe, and essentially hiding spots, places where they could avoid the action if they wanted to. And again, I'm not saying all of their maps are like this, and I'm not saying their maps don't have any power positions that are comparable to Cold War's power positions, but most of the maps in Modern Warfare have a lot of these areas where they aren't really considered power positions. They're not holding a key area of the map, and yet they are very attractive positions for people to camp in and just wait for some unsuspecting enemy to come by. So map design is a very important element to distinguish between these two. However, gameplay design also comes into this as well, and a huge aspect of this is footstep audio and the way they balance footstep audio. Essentially, when you have really loud footstep audio in an FPS game, you're going to be giving much more power to the stationary players that are more reactionary and wait for the enemies to come to them because they can hear those enemies approach and they know exactly where they're going to be. And you're taking the power away from people that are actively moving around because not only are they really loud and easy for the enemy to hear, they're not going to be able to use those same tools against their enemies that aren't moving and they're just sitting in a stationary position because they're not making the same amount of sound. And the key difference between Cold War and Modern Warfare 2019 is in Cold War, we have the Ninja perk, which allows us to have essentially silent footsteps 100% of the time as long as that perk is equipped on our class setup. Whereas with Modern Warfare 2019, we had Dead Silence as a field upgrade, which meant that we could have quiet footsteps, but only for a short duration and only a few times throughout a match, and we had to actively select when we wanted to activate those silent footsteps. So with this in mind, it's pretty clear that people that are camping and waiting for enemies to come to them have a clear advantage in Modern Warfare over Cold War. Because unless their enemy just happened to have that Dead Silence activated at the moment where they're approaching them, they could really easily rely on footstep audio to keep them safe in their camping position. Whereas in Cold War, at least in my lobbies, almost everybody is running Ninja, and therefore a camper has much less power against them. It's much easier to approach and kill a camper in Cold War at any given point in the match compared to Modern Warfare, where you essentially had to wait for your Dead Silence to charge up, and then you had to use it at the proper time as well. So footstep audio is definitely a huge factor here that plays into the power of camping in a particular game. However, there's another key aspect to the gameplay that I feel encourages camping and rewards camping much more in Modern Warfare compared to Cold War, and this is the time to kill in general. For the most part, Cold War guns are going to be killing slower than in Modern Warfare. They usually take an extra bullet or so to kill compared to Modern Warfare. And the slower the time to kill is, the more power you're taking away from the camping playstyle. Because the way this works is with the camping playstyle, essentially what you're trying to do is take people off guard and ambush them. And if you're able to put that player down really quickly, then this gives them less of an opportunity to react and fight back against you. And this is why hardcore game modes tend to play slower than core game modes. I'm not saying there aren't exceptions or people out there that are successful rushing around in hardcore modes, because you can do that if you're a good player. But in general, hardcore modes tend to play a little bit slower than core modes because you're rewarded so much for taking people off guard and essentially just camping and waiting for them to walk into your sights, because they won't have any time to react and fight back against you. So taking that same logic over to comparing Cold War versus Modern Warfare, in Cold War you have a bit more time to react and fight back against somebody that ambushes you or takes you off guard, or a camper essentially. So this is yet another reason that I feel camping is much more powerful and much more common in Modern Warfare. Additionally, another key difference between these two games when it comes to how they handle campers is how they handle their Ghost perk. In Modern Warfare, if you're using Ghost on your class setup, you will never appear on the radar to an enemy UAV. Even if you're just sitting in some random insignificant corner of the map waiting for somebody to walk by so you can shoot them in the back, you're not going to be showing up when they call a UAV in against you. Whereas if you try to do that in Cold War, it's not going to work because you have to be at least somewhat on the move for Ghost to stay active for you in Cold War. And this was a conscious decision they made with the Ghost perk to try and reduce camping in the game. And I consider it to be quite effective. Now, having said this, Cold War isn't completely anti-camper. In fact, there is one field upgrade that helps campers a good amount in Black Ops Cold War, and this is the field mic. When you throw one of these down on the ground, it's going to be pinging enemies on your minimap that come within the radius of that field mic, unless they're using the counter, which is spycraft. There isn't anything quite like this in Modern Warfare, and therefore with this one particular element, yes, it's definitely easier to camp in Cold War. However, I don't think having this one field upgrade is nearly enough to swing the tide on which game is campier in general. I would much rather be picked up on an enemy's field mic where they have to actively look at their minimap and see me coming as that dot, than someone hearing my footsteps from a mile away and knowing exactly where I am just through sound alone. And yeah, that's pretty much where I wanted to wrap up today's video. Overall, when comparing the effectiveness of camping between Cold War and Modern Warfare, it isn't even close in my mind. Modern Warfare 2019 is a game that heavily encourages and rewards the camping playstyle, whereas Cold War has many elements that actively go against this. Additionally, I think it is very important to distinguish between holding a power position and camping. Cold War is much more about gaining that map control and getting to those power positions so that you can lock down important areas of the map. Whereas Modern Warfare is much more on the side of giving you random places that you can sort of hide in and wait to ambush your enemies as they run by or as they approach you. And for me, I think you can probably already tell what I lean toward. I lean far more toward Cold War's gameplay. I would much rather deal with a team full of people that are utilizing power positions because these positions are predictable and they often have really good counters to them. And this is stuff that you learn over time as you play on the maps. You learn how to counter all of the power positions and what your options are in order to deal with those people that are on those power positions. And sometimes you have to poke and prod a little bit to find that right route or that right angle to take to fight against them. Whereas combating a camper in Modern Warfare that's hiding in some random area of the map that isn't predictable and often completely useless to their team, this is much more frustrating to run into, in my opinion. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on all of this. This is going to be a little bit subjective. A lot of it, like I said, depends on your definition of what camping is. But I did want to share my thoughts on this just after seeing so many comments with people saying that Cold War is actually campier than Modern Warfare, which I just don't agree with. Of course, I'd like to know in the comments section below, what are your thoughts on this topic? Which game do you think is campier? And also, which style of gameplay do you prefer? Holding power positions or camping? Just let me know those thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.